Good morning, Greg Wormuth, along with WFTV legal analyst Bill Schaefer. We're glad you're waking up with us on this Saturday morning. Could this be verdict day? Let's set the stage for you this morning. Again, we're in Sanford, Florida. Again, we know we have people on our website, WFTV.com, participating in our blog and watching our live stream, and then, of course, here in Orlando, Florida as well. And here's a live look at the beautiful Seminole County Courthouse. And as I'm looking at the monitor, I see Mark O'Meara as well walking into court right now. But there's the courthouse. No real protest to speak of this morning. Behind it is the Seminole County Jail. If he is convicted on any of these two counts, he will be remanded to the custody of the state of Florida, then go through a tunnel and be incarcerated in those pod-like facilities until such time that there is the in terms of penalty phase of this trial. But again, as I'm looking at our camera inside the courtroom, courtroom 5D, Mark O'Meara seen there on camera. There's Don West, and there's a great state of Florida seal. But Bill, as we look at that scene, it is very tranquil here. As I look behind me, I see a lot of Seminole County deputies, some undercover vehicles as well. There's the protest area right in front. You see a few people gathered there. Many of those are members of the media. That's the grassy area lined by the trees. Yesterday we saw some protesters, some shouting, but nothing that was out of the ordinary.
Yeah, you know, I walked over after our broadcast, and the protesters were still out there, and they were very orderly, and sometimes voices were raised, but not really raised in so much anger as just, I want to be heard. So there was a good presence, and I talked to some of the deputies, and the deputies were very happy with how the crowd was conducting themselves. And so, again, we continue to see peaceful participation, mainly people just saying hooray for our side. Greg,
you thought that the real telling sign was these 6 jurors who throughout the process, and we've been here since the very beginning of the voir dire process, the jury selection process, that they have tried to push through. They've pushed through several of the bathroom breaks. They've gone later. They've asked for more witnesses to come forward. They wanted to continue on with closing arguments. But they only met for 3 hours and 35 minutes back behind closed doors. Do you think they did a quick poll and maybe they're all on the same page, go back to the hotel, get their things together, shower, put on, maybe their best dresses and be ready to deliver a verdict?
I think that you may be right. Those are certainly the signs that indicate to me that this jury is not in a hurry to get it over with, Greg, but just focused on the task at hand and let's get it done. We owe it to the defendant, we owe it to Trayvon Martin, we owe it to the community, we owe it to the system. Let's get our work done. Now, there's certainly...
Let me interrupt you for 2 seconds as we look inside the courtroom, and then you can continue with that thought. There's George Zimmerman, quite possibly spent his last night in freedom with his wife, Shelley. He came in. He is wearing, again, a dark suit with a dark-colored tie and a light-colored shirt. We see him smile just a little bit, but yesterday when he came back in, as they were told there was one more thing from the jury, they wanted to be excused for the day, we saw him what looked like a smile and looked like maybe he had some indication that there was a verdict that was favorable to him. Now, none of us know, but there are indications as a defense attorney when you hear certain things, you pick things up and you have that feeling as well.
Yeah, I do. And again, I could be completely wrong. I've been wrong once or twice in my life. I can't recall when, but I know I have been.
Like Charles Barkley said, I might be wrong, but I doubt it.
That's good. I'll have to remember that. By the way, you indicated that if there is a conviction, there would be a sentencing hearing. Know that the jury does not, because this is not a first-degree murder case, participate in sentencing. That's just the court.
We're on the record for case number 12, CF1083A, State versus George Zimmerman. Is there anything we need to take up before we bring the jury in?
No, Your Honor. No, Your Honor.
Okay, let's go ahead and bring them in.
The jury is coming in. We have court reporters in there in terms of Kathy Bellich and some others that are monitoring what they look like this morning. We are on Channel 9 and TV 27. We will stay with this coverage as long as they are in the courtroom, and then we'll periodically break in for the verdict. But back to courtroom 5D.
Please be seated. Good morning, ladies. Welcome back. I'm going to ask you my questions. If your answer is yes to any of them, please raise your hand. During the overnight recess, did any of you have any discussions amongst yourselves or with anybody else about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you read or listen to any emails, text messages, tweets, social networking blogs, or social networking pages about the case? Did any of you create any of those items? Did any of you read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case? Okay, we're going to send you back to deliberate. All of the evidence, if it isn't already back there, will be back there with you in just a moment. If you have any questions or any requests, please put them in writing and hand them to the deputy. Thank you very much. You are excused. Please be seated. Is there anything we need to take up before we recess for either a question or a verdict?
Not to say, Your Honor. No, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much. Court will be in recess.
Greg Wormuth along with WFTV legal analyst Bill Schaefer. As I look at some of the tweets coming in from the folks in the courtroom, this is the first time they have seen the jury as 6, because it was 9 before the 3 alternates were excused last night. But again, you heard that all of the evidence is back there in the jury deliberation room, 250 plus pieces of evidence. What do you take from that?
Oh, the evidence always goes back with the jury. It was a little different in Casey Anthony, but normally the evidence does go back with the jury, so I don't draw any inferences from that at all. Certainly didn't draw any inference from the request for, if you will, an itemized inventory of the evidence so that they could refer to that inventory list and then go right to whatever piece of evidence they wanted to examine for whatever reason.
And the way these typically work is we look in the pool of reporters that are there as well, friends and family of both sides there as well today. The way this works is you go back, you choose a 4-person, then maybe a quick poll, like where do you stand on all of this? And we also know that the other piece of paper that they have back with them is the verdict form, which I have right here. We also have it graphically for you, and we'll go through that. This is what they will fill out. This is the verdict form, Bill, and it basically says State of Florida versus George Zimmerman. The verdict: we, the jury, find George Zimmerman guilty of murder in the 2nd degree as charged in the information. We, the jury, find George Zimmerman guilty of manslaughter, a lesser included offense. We, the jury, find George Zimmerman not guilty. And then the special findings that also says so say we all, and the special findings are basically this: we find that George Zimmerman discharged a firearm causing a death of great bodily harm to another during the commission of the offense. We find that George Zimmerman discharged a firearm without causing death or great bodily harm to another during the commission of the offense. We find that George Zimmerman actually possessed but did not discharge a firearm during the commission of the offense. And we find that George Zimmerman did not actually possess or discharge a firearm during the commission of the offense. The special findings as it relates to this are important because those are the things that would increase the penalties of manslaughter regarding the firearm.
It does. That is what would take manslaughter from the 15-year maximum sentence that the court could impose to a 30-year maximum sentence, and it also speaks to the 10-20 life provision in the law. And if in fact the jury were to find that he discharged the firearm causing death or great bodily harm to Trayvon Martin, that would trigger again a mandatory sentence of no less than 25 years up to life.
I'm reading Kathy Bellich's tweet. She says that she can't tell if they look like they're ready to go home today or not. No indication. Kathy did give us a great indication with the Casey Anthony case. She said that several of the jurors who had worn, sweatpant type, warm-up type clothes because it was cold in that courtroom through the long process of that trial the day she saw them in dresses and business suits, she said something is different about this. We have the jury deliberation clock. It will run on your screen even when we go back to regular programming here on Channel 9 and TV 27, but it is showing that the clock is now ticking because they are back in that jury deliberation room. In terms of some of the other cases, the Casey Anthony case was about 11 hours of deliberation in that instance. This one here, we've seen them as quick as 4 hours. We've seen them shorter than that, but there's a lot of evidence for them to go through, even if they have made up their mind. Plus, there's the whole issue, Bill. They know the tension that this case has created. They have to be careful with this jury verdict.
Oh, absolutely. And we came to find out, however, that the Casey Anthony jury reached a verdict the night before the day that the verdict was actually announced. They went back, gathered up their belongings, as you said, gussied up and came to court, and very quickly thereafter rendered their verdict. Could we be seeing the same thing today? That's well possible, but again, whether it's this morning or sometime later today, again, and maybe it's just, maybe my instincts aren't on base, but I just have this feeling, and so many others of us, yourself included, who have watched many trials because Channel 9, that's my job, to watch many trials and report back to the folks as to what we're seeing. Just have this feeling that today is going to be a verdict day in this case.
It makes sense logistically, too, from the state of Florida standpoint, to do something on a Saturday in terms of it's quieter here. There are no other people attending to any other business. There's plenty of parking. As we look behind me, I do see several sheriff's deputies, but again, no protesters, and we anticipate this being a very hot day in Central Florida with storms rolling in later today. So in terms of logistically, not that they're trying to interfere with the jury, but certainly I would think if they had a verdict, it makes sense to do it on a Saturday morning as opposed to, you know, staying here all night last night and doing something late if they felt during that first poll that they had either a guilty or not guilty.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. Again, if the jurors aren't aware, certainly the court is aware of the ramifications of a verdict no matter what it is, and certainly everyone wants to make sure that any reaction is peaceful in nature, and if it's not, that it is an ideal time in which you can practice crowd control, and the less likely you are from the timing for things to get out of hand. Great.
And we have you covered today. Sky Witness 9 HD is up, flying over the area. We're right there on 1792 in Sanford, across from Flea World. People have asked, where is this Seminole County Criminal Justice Center? It's not where the Seminole County Courthouse used to be for these types of trials. Now that is only handling the civil cases and whatnot. This is handling the criminal cases in Seminole County. A relatively new facility that's 5 stories high. They're in courtroom 5D, and that's in the upper right-hand corner. If you were to face the building, that's where that courtroom is, just to point it out logistically as we paint the picture. In terms of the jury clock, again, it's at 3 hours and 42 minutes. It will continue to tick as they are deliberating. What we saw yesterday is they came back on one occasion and asked for the number of pieces of evidence, and they wanted them numerical as well.
That's correct. And again, that fits with this jury and the fact that they've been so highly organized, taking notes, focused, determined to get this evidence to them without much delay so that they can do the job that has been entrusted to them, which is to render a fair and impartial verdict in this case based upon the evidence that is before them.
Okay, we're going to wrap things up here, but we're going to stay online for you. If you have any questions for Bill, we encourage you to go to WFTV.com, participate in our live blog. We've had hundreds of thousands of people over the course of these 23 or 4 days doing that with Bill, and he provides the answers to some of your questions.